thank you for being invited to this exciting seminar. I will give a short introduction to Helen Hard's praxis first. If you don't know some of our work, I will just let them run a bit while having an introduction, and then I will come to my recently finished doctoral research, which is done through and on drawing. So, of course, you will also then see the practice, but through the work, the research work I've been doing. Helen Hard is started by Relational, my partner and myself, in 1996, and we started in this small town on the south coast of, west coast of Norway. It was a booming oil city at the moment, and that's how we got a lot of small projects to do. Today we have a company of 25 people with an office both in Oslo and in Stavanger. We are operating in a commercial market, but we have always been doing also experimental small projects and initiated projects ourselves, like this one. We do cultural buildings, hotels, libraries, and housing. It is a core question to us how we can do architecture with a social ecological awareness, and we are experimenting with that question in every single project. And our answer is a relational design approach. It's inspired by systems thinking and ecology as well as social sciences, and it takes as a start point that there always is a resource household, human, material, and environmental, which we can listen into and find creative synergies with, exchange with, through adaptations and iterations. And this is a basic start point for both reducing our carbon footprint, but also to create a unique design. And in the end, that's what we want. We want to inspire people for a sustainable lifestyle. This is also why we choose to work a lot with timber. So timber architecture has become our specialization, although that is just one emphasis we have when we make a project. It's always a start point. When I started to do my research into my own practice, I was interested in trying to be more explicit about the capacities and methodologies we as architects perform when we are involved in these multi-relational design processes. And on the other hand, to know more about the different levels and qualities of the design itself, which supports these kind of development processes. And I was, or my concern was, and is also currently, that the sustainable discourse are kind of neglecting the intrinsic ecological potential of architecture, which I argue lies much more in its experiential and aesthetical, spatial nature, and which we are not equally able to validate or document by calculations, of course. So the whole research is mainly done and documented through hand drawings, which has developed into a new kind of methodology for accessing more tacit embodied knowledge about these relational design capacities. And at the same time, it serves as a reflective tool. So all these drawings are in dialogue with different areas of the practice, one could say. They are looking at Helen Hard as a system. On the bottom line here, as an evolving organism over 20 years. Then there is a study of the very act of drawing in the middle, And on the top, drawings that are in dialogue with ongoing projects in the office during these 3 years that I've done the research. This is a photo from a presentation I did in Ambika, where all the drawings were printed on a carpet canvas, and I was walking on this territory of drawings presenting. And I tell you, it was the best feeling of a presentation I ever had. It's to recommend. So the relational design capacities I talk about and will discuss here are kind of related to these 3 different levels of the practice. The entire office and how it evolves as a system, and then the sensitivity and respect for the singular contribution, and the inclusive and integrative capacity, making projects as a collective endeavor. The hand drawing experiment started with making drawings of the whole practice. I tried to capture the contingent reality of influences, synergies, accidents, and constellational dynamics around making a project, and how it's evolving together with all the things happening in the praxis. So I did these mappings by drawing the workspace that we had in the different epochs, and I was adding the different activities that were going on, such as the public behavior, the collaborative networks, the methods, the breakthroughs, the values we have, the team and the leadership, the representation, and I represented also the readings or the journeys and the sources of inspirations in these kind of maps. And then I was using presentation software like Prezi to also add images on top, and then I could zoom in and out like I do now, and show the different stages of development of the whole practice. So here we are in our first years, starting the very small projects, and an epoch later where we buy a factory plot, where we develop a lot of prototypes and use that space to grow. A later stage where we are expanding and we buy recycled containers for interns in our backyard. Even later stage where we are making our first self-initiated project and trying to deal with the oil industry in our way. We transfer objects and technology and resources to build this park. And coming later to an interest by moving to Cabin by the Sea, we start to look more closely at how nature are organizing and structuring form and form generation. It's also where we start to be much more conscious about building with timber as a material. And it was when we moved to this Cabin by the Sea, and we started also to look at what is going on in these fascinating tidal zones of the kelp pools, that I was starting to draw. I was drawing just without knowing what it should be. I was fascinated by these forms that were changing all the time. And this is somehow the interest that I picked up again when I started to use it to do the research. So, having done all these maps of Helene Hard's development, I could identify different stages of development, and consequently, and they were defined by the challenges we had in these stages, and consequently also the capacities that we were trained to develop. The first stage is marked by more immersive, direct and personal interaction with spaces and materials and the context. And a second one is much more to do with being able to create concepts around projects that we can share with our employees, and more people can join our development and design processes. And the third stage is marked much more by an interest in system design thinking, learning from nature, and it's very much linked to timber as a building material. So these different capacities, of course, they are today coexisting, and we use them and we jump in between them. And this whole study also learned or helped me to see Helene much more as a growth field for projects. And I got a view of this field that we create from, and which are kind of a third order design, one could say, in an office. It's shown here in the sketch. I cannot use the pointer, but you see how projects are growing out from what I would call a growth field, or the practice as a growth field. And the other sketch here is showing how all the different parts in the project are moving, and at the same time we're trying to combine them and make a whole project of it. So these were experiments with drawing that I was doing in the beginning of the research, parallel to the mapping, trying to grasp the more intangible aspects of what it is to develop a project. But it was, in fact, when I started to look at the drawing itself and what is happening when I'm drawing, that there was a big shift. I was starting to write text in the drawing while drawing, trying to describe what is happening, what is going on exactly when I'm doing this. And of course it relates to bodily sensations, feelings, or thoughts, associations, and by putting that into the drawing, it kind of intensifies how the act of drawing evolves. And one of the findings in this work is that it also reveals or helped me to get in contact with another language, which is much more playful. It speculates, it's poetic in its own way. So there is evidently a tacit knowing that can be revealed through drawing, and also through when one starts to articulate what is going on. And this is something I got very inspired of, and I started to experiment with how drawings can reveal a tacit knowing. When I was doing this drawing, I recognized that the lines I draw are not really abstract, although they look like. They are much more kind of quality of nature that I have immanent, embodied. It's a way of perceiving, responding, or organizing in space that I just know. And I also came to notice that the different lines have different roles in the drawing. There is the wilding line, which is raw and singular. It's breaking the rules of the game. Its quality is a constant risk-taking in the drawing. And there is a weaving line, which transforms, integrates, combines, finding clues to connect, to make patterns by small variations. It's never the same, but never too different. It's always occupied with the terrain, what is there, because that's where the weaving is happening. And then there is the writing line, which has both a meaning as a line and content, but it also works in the drawing as a thickness. It has a small scale and a kind of known behavior. So this deep dive into the act of drawing gave me an insight on very many different levels, and how I could see that there is a structure in the act of drawing which makes it a medium and which makes it possible to access tacit knowledge, and thereby to reflect and research with drawing. So the point is that it's the act of the drawing itself which is very essential. It is in the making that the important insights are foregrounded. Then the resource of knowing where I draw from, in my case, this embodied landscape of the Norwegian harsh coast is a rich resource to form spatial organization. A third is that I have revealed that there is a framework and condition which make this tacit knowledge grow and develop, and that has to do with making the drawing become an event. We have to create a space-time for it to happen. It's a deepening process. It's not happening just as a sketch over the table, but there is a time spent which is important. And fourth, the drawing has as an aesthetic experience in itself. There is a dialogue between the body and the drawing which gives access to this aesthetic experience. And then there is this creative dynamic between the different lines, the wilding and the weaving in my case, which are creative forces that help the design or the drawing to proceed. It's resembling Ranulph Glanville's description of doodling or designing as an ongoing conversation between different personae in ourselves, the actor and the listener. So having this structure of the act of drawing, I see it as a method. I can go back and redraw projects, and I can reveal latent information or new ways of understanding them. Like in this case, the part for the young. So I will switch to an ongoing project where these drawings have kind of been in dialogue with a real development of a project. This is kind of constellation of that period where this project was conceived. And it's both this systemic view or the overall view of the office and the very act of drawing, which will be the two perspectives that I look to this project. Of course, there's a lot more to say, but these are the two focuses I will have. In this epoch, we are, as an office, we are moving from our factory plot to make space for a self-initiated co-living project. And in this case, Helene takes on many different roles. We are owner of the land, we are developers, we are architects, we are future dwellers. And the co-living project is developed together with an industrial designer and an investor, and it includes principles for how we can organize this as a business or a management model. There is a new building system developed. There is a user participation process where the people are engaged in how to form their dwellings. This project has undergone many different changes during the research, but two main one I have kind of reflected on and been in dialogue with through drawing. One was due to the preservation authorities pleading to keep an old factory on the plot, and the second change was triggered by cost calculations showing too low economic return in the project. And this drawing on the top reflects the complexity of considerations, evaluations, and consequences of making these changes. This one showing a very chaotic but very creative stage when a main element, the whole factory, is kind of disappearing, and by drawing this disappearance, the idea of making a ruined playground is coming forth. And there is another drawing showing or exploring the invisible lines between the houses and insisting on the life that is going to be there. A kind of anticipation of this rich life we hope that the project will hold space for. And then there are two drawings which attempt to combine the master plan layout with all the different sub-projects that are going on in parallel and continuously influencing it and the other way around. And I'm exploring what kind of language, design language, could link these different scales, the master plans level and the detail of an entrance, for example. And one of the sub-projects are, in fact, a mock-up of a dwelling unit made on the site to test the prefab system in timber. And by exposing the layers of this prefab system and its connecting doubles, there is a language created which allows also for the user to compose their own entrance niche. And at the same time, there is a narrative of the making of the house. So this was a prototype of that small kit that could be provided each dweller. And the prototype is also used for social gathering of the people that are either already convinced or people that are still doubting. This is a very kind of hybrid event. It serves many purposes. It's also an opportunity for them to feel a space that is completely made out of timber and exposed timber. And we as stakeholders get a lot of information back from the people. And it's an example of a synergistic procedure which is possible because of these new constellations and our new roles. We have more systemic agency, and we can somehow combine sales with user participation and a workshop. This is a drawing that tries to, it's an overlay of two ways of presenting the project. The very rational one where we say that we build with a timber component, and it kind of is the component that builds all the levels of design all the way down to the site. But of course the reality is much more complex, and these levels of design are all the time disturbed and linked differently, and one is running up and down through these different scales all the time. And this is a redrawing of the plan layout of the co-living at a later stage, where the lines that I was exploring in the master plan earlier has become much more concrete. They are marking individual entrance niches, buffer zones to the shared areas. They're indicating belts of plants and vegetation, and they're also describing topography, which can be exposed in these shared spaces. And then I'm showing also how drawing is used to kind of solve a crisis. We were drawing the table of confusion up there, and together we tried to draw a table of shared purpose, which we thought was the solution to the crisis. And this drawing is also showing how Helene Hart's accumulated values are kind of giving us a tool to operate in this crisis. So there is another awareness of using our accumulated knowledge to solve such a challenge. And we also, at this stage, or I see it through the research, that the way we conceive a project is more like a fractal of our practice. So it's really like a whole organism that is born when one is starting to make a project. It has to have all the different elements in it, just like a practice. And these different relational capacities that I've explored through the research in this co-living project could be maybe summed up on 3 different levels. There is the level of an increased systemic agency that we have because we take on different roles. Where we engage much more in making an appropriate growth field for the project. Organizational, procedural, economical. And then there is, of course, the material, structural, spatial design language, which are made to allow for and the development through iterations, which is sensitive to individual and singular contextual influences, and which is welcoming multiple feedback, still guiding also the design to become a whole in the end. And then there are the new methodologies that I discovered through drawing, which is a way of accessing and collecting both subjective and collective experiences of more embodied intelligence of well-being or belonging, both through the user participation, the hand drawings, which are kind of celebrating the singularity and difference, and also engaging and evoking much more sensorial system by both exposing and narrating the processes of creation in itself. How am I with time?
I think 5 more minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, 5 or 10. 5 is definitely 5.
Yeah. So I have time to show you now the project?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Then I will show a project which is ongoing, and it's kind of conceived in this new, through this new understanding of the project as a fractal of the whole practice. It's body and mind spa for the performing artist Marina Abramovic, and it's going to be in her huge garden. Her only requirement is that we have to include her crystal collection. And she's going to use it for her cleansing and bodily rituals, which she is also doing in her performances. In this project, we are exploring drawings in different ways, and I even use drawing to approach the project before having any idea about the spatial conception. Although we know that a lot of our interest fields will be actualized in this project, we know there will be a timber structure, we know we will of course use the landscape that is there, but these drawings are inspired by just following the lines and how the lines can become, with the lines, different properties can also be a weave in itself, so different materiality can be woven together. And we thought this could be a kind of start point for an atmospheric quality in this spa house. And then I used drawings as an underlay for making collages with different materials to translate from drawing to reality. But drawings are also used in many different ways, from normal sketching, which are running parallel to building a parametric model. And I think this dialogue between doing hand sketches to know what the relations one wants is, and at the same time building it in a digital model is a very rich and constructive dialogue. It's not one or the other. And there is a redrawing, which is interesting. It's a drawing which tries to look at the whole project again. I would like this drawing, but it was important because I recognized that the 3 walls has to be constructive. We cannot just say that the walls are self-supportive and that the roof should be supported by another structure. So this was a decisive moment in developing the project. Here we are also testing the structure in a 1 to 10 scale. And the people can work on very different parts of the project. There is the basket in this inner space, there is the crystalline shape of the overall roof, and then there is the geology of the plan layout. We're also testing how the crystals can be integrated and in fact be held by the screws that are connecting the timber beams. This is the image of the spa so far. So, first of all, then I want to ask some questions in the end. How is drawing related to an ecological awareness? And the question we ask when we do architecture. And I have a hypothesis, which is a bit daring to say, but I think that with an emerging ecological awareness that we all have, I think we are yearning for renewed architectural competencies and practices and methodologies, which exactly explores, articulates, and interweaves very different design orders. And with design orders, I mean that we operate both on a systemic level, preparing the growth field for a project, and at the same time still insist on the first level, which is that we engage with the project with our bodies, with our feelings, with our passive knowing about how to arrange space and how to achieve aesthetic qualities in space. And I think these two, the third level, as I name it, and the first level is maybe something that also support each other. So the first level is many times challenged in a practice. It's not easy to keep it alive and to give it space in the normal rush of producing things, but we have to create the conditions for it to still be there. Yeah, thank you.